Imagine you are sitting in a really crucial meeting. The room is quiet, the projector is humming, and your colleague just proposed something you completely disagree with.
Oh, that is the worst feeling.
Right. Like maybe it's factually wrong,
Yeah.
or maybe it's just a genuinely bad idea, or you just know based on your experience that it is not going to work.
Yeah.
And in that moment, you freeze, like your chest tightens. And it's not because you lack thoughts. You know exactly what you think and why this plan is totally flawed.
You freeze because you don't know how to say it.
Exactly. You don't know how to express those thoughts in English without sounding rude or aggressive or disrespectful.
Hmm.
So you make the easiest choice, which is you just stay silent.
You just nod along.
Yeah, you nod along. And afterward, you're sitting at your desk and you feel incredibly frustrated. You feel that imposter syndrome creeping in because you know you just let a bad idea move forward simply because you couldn't find the diplomatic vocabulary to stop it.
It's such a highly relatable picture you're painting. And honestly, it is one of the most common and painful struggles for intermediate English learners.
I can imagine.
Because, disagreeing politely, it is genuinely one of the most nuanced things you can do in any language. Direct translations from your native language, they often just sound incredibly blunt when you bring them into English.
It feels like navigating a minefield, really. Like you think you're offering a helpful critique, but because you picked the wrong word or just the wrong phrasing, your thoughtful pushback suddenly lands as a personal attack.
Exactly. And the whole conversation just derails.
But there is a way through this. And that is our mission for today's deep dive. We are extracting a really comprehensive toolkit from our sources today.
12 specific strategies, right?
12 specific strategies that native English speakers use to disagree, challenge, and push back, all while keeping the conversation warm and professional. By the end of this deep dive, you will have the linguistic armor so you never feel stuck in that silent frustration again.
I love that. And, the absolute foundation of this toolkit, like the place we have to start, is actually the psychology of being heard.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
So before you can even introduce your opposing thought, you have to manage the other person's ego. When human beings hear disagreement, the brain's threat response, the amygdala, it often flares up. So you have to lower the emotional temperature of the room first.
Which brings us to the art of validation, right?
Yes.
Our sources highlight a specific structure that's basically the gold standard for this. You say, I see where you're coming from, but...
It is incredibly effective.
Yeah.
Because in literally one sentence, it tells the other person 3 vital things. It says, I heard you, I understood your reasoning, and now here is why I think differently.
It lowers the defenses.
Exactly. Validating someone before challenging them hacks that threat response.
Yeah.
The person feels respected before they ever feel disagreed with.
So let's put this into a real-world scenario for the listener. Imagine your manager wants to move a project deadline up by a month. Yeah. Nightmare. You don't just say, that's impossible. You lean in and you say, I see where you're coming from, but I think the timeline might be too tight.
Right. Or say you're looking at finances. You might say, I see where you're coming from. I just worry the budget won't stretch that far.
You could also use it for data, like, I see where you're coming from, but the data tells a slightly different story.
Yeah, that's a great one.
And there are a few casual variations of this, too, from the source material, right? Like saying, I understand where you're coming from, or I get what you're saying, but...
Those work beautifully. I mean, the exact words can shift a little, but the structure itself is non-negotiable.
What do you mean?
You must acknowledge first, then make your point. If you reverse it, like if you make your point and then try to validate them afterward, it just does not work. The acknowledgement is what paves the road for the disagreement to land softly.
Got it. Now, if you want to take that validation a step further, the sources suggest an upgrade to this, which is phrase 2. That's a fair point, although...
Oh, this one is slightly more generous, I think. You aren't just acknowledging that they have a perspective. You are actively crediting their point as valid and logical before you introduce your complication.
Okay, so sticking with that terrible deadline example, I might say, that's a fair point, although I wonder if we've considered all the risks.
Yes, or that's a fair point, although the numbers from last quarter suggest a different trend.
What if you're discussing a new product feature with your team?
Then you could say, that's a fair point. Although from the client's perspective, it might look quite different.
If you are an English learner listening to this, I want you to think about a really specific analogy here. Think about the word but as a stop sign at an intersection.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
When you use but, it basically halts the flow of traffic. It subconsciously cancels out whatever positive thing you just said before it. However, the word although acts like a yield sign.
I love that framing. Because a yield sign doesn't stop the traffic.
Exactly. It just asks everyone to look around, accommodate the merging cars, and kind of keep moving forward together.
It adds nuance.
Yeah, it adds nuance. It says to your colleague, both of our ideas can be true and exist at the same time. Training yourself to naturally replace the stop sign of but with the yield sign of although will immediately elevate how your pushback is received.
It totally leaves the door open for collaboration.
Mm.
And, that idea of keeping the door open leads us perfectly into the next layer of this toolkit.
Which is?
Well, once we've lowered the temperature and validated the other person, how do we actually introduce our own dissenting idea without sounding like a know-it-all?
And the sources say we do this by using intentional uncertainty, which I will admit feels a little counterintuitive at first glance. Like, if I know my colleague's idea is wrong, shouldn't I sound confident and certain?
Well, not if you want them to actually listen to you.
Fair point.
If you come in with absolute certainty, you just trigger that ego defense all over again. Intentional uncertainty bypasses that entirely. So consider phrase 3. I'm not sure I agree with that. Or maybe I'm not entirely sure I agree.
So I am explicitly not saying you are wrong.
Right. You are just stating that your position happens to be different, and you want to explore the gap between your two perspectives.
Yeah.
It's an invitation, really.
I see.
Imagine someone proposes a marketing strategy you think will fail. You don't attack the strategy. You say, I'm not sure I agree with that approach. Can you walk me through your thinking?
You're kind of putting the ball back in their court. Or you could say, I'm not entirely sure I agree. I'd want to look at the data before committing.
Yeah, and this works brilliantly in larger meetings, too. Like, you can look around the table and say, I'm not sure I agree with that. What do others think?
Oh, that's clever.
It is. You are distributing the tension. Instead of a one-on-one battle of ideas, it becomes a group puzzle to solve.
Which brings us to phrase 4, which operates on that exact same puzzle-solving psychology. Have you considered?
Oh, this is arguably one of the most elegant ways to disagree in the English language.
Yeah.
Because it literally does not look like a disagreement.
How so?
Well, instead of saying, I disagree because of this specific problem, you ask a question that introduces the problem.
Yeah.
You let the other person arrive at the roadblock themselves.
Okay, let's role play this. Imagine I'm pushing for us to launch a software update on a Friday afternoon, which is, notoriously a terrible idea in tech.
I definitely wouldn't tell you it's a terrible idea. I would just look at you and ask, have you considered what happens if the launch gets delayed and we need IT support over the weekend?
Ah, I see what you did there. I'd have to say, oh, right. Or I guess you could say, have you considered how the clients might react to this change happening right before they close out their week?
Yes. Or simply, that's interesting. Have you considered doing it in phases instead?
And the sources list a few variations that accomplish the exact same thing, right? Like, what if we, where, or is it possible that, or could there be a risk that?
Exactly. They all work the same way.
But wait, I have to jump in with a genuine concern here.
Go for it.
If I use a question to disguise a disagreement, won't a smart manager just see right through that? It feels like it runs the risk of sounding incredibly passive-aggressive if they know I'm just using a tactic.
That is a really sharp observation,
Yeah.
actually. And it really all comes down to your tone.
Tone, okay.
Yeah, it only sounds passive-aggressive if you ask it rhetorically, with a smirk, already knowing you were right. But if you ask it with genuine curiosity, it operates on 2 distinct levels.
Which are?
First, it might genuinely be a blind spot they haven't thought of, in which case you literally just saved the project. And second, it shifts their brain from a defensive posture to an analytical posture.
Yeah.
You are making them think about a variable rather than making them defend their ego.
So it turns an adversary into a collaborator.
Precisely.
But what happens when we move out of everyday collaboration with our peers and we find ourselves in a highly formal setting, say a board meeting or presenting to senior leadership? Do these casual questions still work?
They can, but formal settings often require a different, more efficient framework because senior leaders value time.
Right.
That is where you use phrase 5. I take your point, but I think this is short, clean, and highly professional. Saying, I take your point, signals that their message was received and registered perfectly without requiring a long emotional validation.
So if a VP says we need to cut the budget, I could say, I take your point about the cost, but I think the long-term value outweighs it.
Exactly. Or, I take a point, but I think we need to hear from the full team before deciding. Or even, I take your point about the deadline. I just think we're setting ourselves up for problems if we rush.
The sources show some really crisp, confident variations here, too, like saying, point taken, however.
No.
Point taken, however, the situation in Q4 was quite different from now.
Yes. It doesn't over-acknowledge. It simply says, noted. Now here's my perspective.
Now, what happens if you don't just disagree with a minor detail, but you think the entire underlying premise of the meeting is just wrong?
Oh, that is the nightmare scenario.
It is. How do you pivot an entire room without telling everyone they are wasting their time?
For that, you use a complete reframe. Phrase 6. I think there might be another way to look at this.
It sounds so gentle for such a massive pivot.
That is exactly why it works. It doesn't label the current conversation as wrong. It merely offers a parallel universe of thought. So you might say, I think there might be another way to look at this. Instead of seeing it as a problem, could it actually be an opportunity?
Or, I think there might be another way to look at this situation. The data could support a different interpretation.
Right. Or if you need to stall a bad decision, you say, before we decide, I think there might be another way to look at what the client actually needs here.
What if the group is just sprinting in the wrong direction and you need to be bolder?
Then you can say, I wonder if we're looking at this the right way.
Our sources actually share a fantastic story that shows these specific strategies shifting the energy of a room. So there's this product team, and they've been arguing about a pricing strategy for an hour.
Tensions are high.
Very high. People are getting defensive. And finally, a team member named James speaks up, and he doesn't attack the pricing model. He says, I see where you're coming from, but I think there might be another way to look at this. Have you considered that the issue might actually be how we're communicating the value rather than the price itself?
And then, when someone immediately pushes back on his new idea, James doesn't get defensive. He just says, point taken. I'm not sure I entirely agree. Have you considered running a small test first?
And the result is incredible. He challenged the entire room's foundational assumption, but nobody felt attacked. Everyone felt heard, and they finally broke the deadlock and moved forward.
It's just a masterclass in diplomacy. But, we also have to address the flip side of this.
The flip side.
Yeah. Sometimes there is a risk of being so polite and softening your language so much that the room completely misses your point.
Oh, that's true. So how do you inject directness back into the conversation without destroying the goodwill you just built?
That requires a specific linguistic formula. We are talking about directness with a softener. And the go-to phrase here, phrase 7, is, I'd push back a little on that.
Okay.
This is the quintessential professional English way of signaling clear, intentional disagreement. You are putting a flag in the ground, but you are keeping it collegial.
So I could say, I'd push back a little on that the timeline assumes everything goes perfectly, which rarely happens.
Exactly. Or imagine someone blames a failure on another department. You can say, I'd push back on that characterization. The team worked incredibly hard on this. Or I'd gently push back here. The data supports a more cautious approach.
If you are listening to this, I really want you to notice a brilliant language trick happening under the hood here.
Yeah.
You are combining a direct, strong verb with a softening adverb. You are pairing a strong action, like pushing back, with a gentle modifier, like a little or gently. I want you to think of it like the shock absorbers on a car.
Oh, I love analogies. Go on.
The direct verb is the pothole in the road, and the softening adverb is the suspension system. So you still feel the bump, you still make your point, but it doesn't wreck the axle of the conversation.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. You are being unmistakably clear, but signaling that your intention is constructive. Our sources give other great examples of this exact pattern too, like I'd respectfully disagree, or I'd politely challenge that assumption, or I'd humbly suggest a different approach.
Another phrase that accomplishes this balance is phrase 8.
That's one way to look at it personally, I think.
Yes, that's one way to look at it. Personally, I think the risk is manageable if we plan carefully.
Or, that's one way to look at it. Personally, I'd prioritize the user experience over the cost savings.
Exactly. Or, that's one way to look at it. Personally, I think we're being too cautious. It seems to me the word personally is doing a massive amount of heavy lifting in those sentences.
It absolutely is.
Right.
By emphasizing the word personally, you remove the claim of objective truth.
Right.
You are validating their perspective as a legitimate way to view the world, and then presenting your view as equally legitimate. You aren't claiming superiority. This is especially vital in creative brainstorms or like high-level strategy meetings where there simply is no single right answer.
So we've covered validation, curiosity, formal pivots, and softened directness. Now we move into phrases that lean heavily on emotional intelligence.
My favorite.
How do we frame our disagreement not as a roadblock to progress, but as a protective measure?
You frame it as a concern. The phrase is number 9. I understand the logic, but I'm concerned that. This completely transforms a criticism of their work into an act of care and responsibility for the company.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's ideal when you see a risk that everyone else in the room missed.
So imagine the team wants to rush a product to market. You say, I understand the logic, but I'm concerned that moving this fast could create quality issues.
Or, I understand the logic behind the decision. I'm just concerned that the team doesn't have the capacity right now. Or, I understand the logic, but I'm concerned that we haven't fully thought through the implications.
The sources mention related phrases that use the same protective framing, too, like, my concern is that, what worries me slightly is, or the one thing I'd flag is.
Right. Framing it as a concern shows you are deeply invested in the outcome. Now, if you are in a situation where you need to be maximally polite, you escalate to phrase 10. Would it be worth considering?
Would it be worth considering a phased approach rather than a full launch? Or would it be worth considering what the competitors are doing before we decide?
Or even, would it be worth considering getting a second opinion on this?
Notice the grammatical distance there. You are making a suggestion. You're asking the room if a suggestion is even warranted. But let me ask you, when would you actually use something this deferential? Is it too soft for just everyday casual use?
Honestly, it is definitely too soft for a daily stand-up meeting with your peers. The research indicates this specific phrasing is best reserved for rooms with very high-ego senior leaders, or for highly sensitive topics where you want to avoid triggering conflict, or when the room is caught in a frenzy and you are trying to deliberately slow down a rushed, panicked decision.
Good to know. What if I am just in a one-on-one with a colleague I work with every day?
To that, you want the casual warmth of phrase 11.
I hear you. I just think. Saying, I hear you, provides both emotional and intellectual acknowledgement, and the word just casually softens the introduction of your view.
I hear you. I just think we're underestimating how long this will take.
Or, I hear you, I just think the timing could be better. Or, I totally hear you, I just think there's a simpler way to do this.
It maintains the relationship while shifting the logistics.
Okay, we have covered 11 powerful phrases. We've talked about yield signs, shock absorbers, and hacking the amygdala.
You've covered a lot.
We have. But the final tool in this toolkit, phrase 12, the most underrated strategy for an English learner isn't actually a phrase at all.
No, it's not. It is silence, followed by, let me think about that.
The intentional pause. I think for a lot of non-native speakers, silence feels like a failure. It feels like you are broadcasting to the room, I don't understand the English.
Oh, that is a very common fear. But in English, professional culture, pausing before responding actually builds massive credibility.
Really?
Yes. It projects confidence. It shows you take the conversation and your colleague's idea seriously enough to weigh it. And honestly, it prevents you from having an impulsive emotional reaction.
You literally just let the silence hang and then say, let me think about that. Or, that's interesting, let me sit with that for a moment.
I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly before I respond. Or simply, that's worth thinking about. Can I come back to you on that?
If you take nothing else away from this deep dive, remember this. Silence is not weakness. Thoughtful pauses are not hesitation.
Absolutely. And to see the true power of this entire toolkit, the sources share one final brilliant story. It's about a woman named Sophia.
Oh, I love this story.
Yeah. She's a brand new employee. English is not her first language, and she finds herself in an intimidating boardroom with the company directors. And they present a project timeline of 6 weeks.
And Sophia knows from her technical background that 6 weeks is a recipe for disaster.
Right. And the stakes are incredibly high. I mean, she could stay silent, let the project fail, and just protect herself in the moment.
But instead, she speaks up and she stacks these tools beautifully.
She starts by hacking the threat response with validation. She says, I see where you're coming from with the need to move fast. Then she uses a shock absorber to introduce directness. But I'd push back a little on the timeline.
And then she frames her disagreement as empathy for the company. I'm concerned that 6 weeks doesn't give us enough buffer for testing.
The director pushes back, obviously, defending his 6-week plan. But Sophia doesn't panic. She pivots to a collaborative question.
She says, I hear you. I just think there might be another way to look at this. Would it be worth considering a phased delivery?
And here's where the magic happens. The director, this intimidating senior leader, literally uses silence. He pauses. He thinks about it. Then he validates her. That's one way to look at it. Personally, I think it could work.
And Sophia seals the deal with that beautiful verb-adverb combo. I'd respectfully suggest that the clients would actually prefer it.
By using these tools, a new employee transformed a potential career-limiting argument into the closest thing to an enthusiastic yes you can get in a corporate boardroom.
It is proof that the right framework changes everything.
It really does.
So let's briefly recap the journey you've been on today. You have learned how to hack the ego and validate first with, I see where you're coming from. You've learned to bypass defenses by asking collaborative questions like, have you considered? You know how to use shock absorbers to soften your directness with, I'd push back a little. And ultimately, you've learned to leverage the sheer confidence of the thoughtful pause.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to explore on your own.
What's that?
Well, the research we've discussed today focuses entirely on the words. But the next time you are in a meeting, observe the body language of native speakers when they use these 12 phrases.
Oh, that's interesting.
Watch how their posture visibly relaxes, how their eye contact softens when they say, that's a fair point, although, or watch how they physically lean back when they take that intentional pause. The words give you the script, but pairing those words with calm, open body language is what truly changes the atmosphere of the room.
That is a fantastic observation to take with us. Remember, this toolkit doesn't just help you disagree. It ensures that when you do speak up, you are heard, respected, and taken seriously. So the next time you are in that meeting and a colleague pitches a terrible idea, you will not freeze, you will not stay silent, you know exactly what to say. Thank you for joining this deep dive.